Thank you, Lynn, and thank you, Helga. So, Lynn, I think we have a few minutes for questions. So if a few people could come up, Jean. We'll take Jean first, and then we'll take you, Rob. Good. And you can go third. And we'll see. Please keep your questions succinct and go ahead.
All right.
Introduce yourself.
Hello, Mr. LaRouche. My name is Jean Essick. I live in Yucca Valley, California. This is not a question. It is something that I want to tell you. I wanted us to meet today to let you know that I am sending you some on-source data and technology I want to ensure you are aware of. This data actually backs up some of the things you've been saying about our national crises. And when this technology is understood and correctly applied, it is an effective solution to remove Barack Obama from office and thus open the way to pass Glass-Steagall. And you will be receiving this information this week. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Robert Newman. I live in Redlands, California. I'm a psychologist by official training. I'm into water and agriculture in California. However, you've spoken a great deal about the economics. You've left out, to a notable extent, the issue of morality and the psyche of human beings, in particular in relation to greed. That's the decay that we've noted rather than commitment to one another. Please address the issue of morality and the issue of greed in human beings. Thank you.
Well, very simply, I have no problem with that proposition. That's precisely my own. That the issue is the increase of the productive powers of labor and the standard and conditions of life of our citizens. Those are the things that have been destroyed. You want to take also the cultural degeneration of the United States. Since the assassination of John F. Kennedy, there has been a steady decline in the cultural and moral character of the United States population. That doesn't mean in every person, but it means that the trend among persons is that. And in point of fact, it has been, since the assassination of John F. Kennedy, which was tolerated by leading institutions of the United States, leading political parties and other. It was known what it was, the lid was put on, and the genocide went on. And the United States never recovered from the trend that was set forth by tolerating the assassination of John F. Kennedy, then later his brother as well. That's where the problem lies. And ever since that time, the policies of the United States have been corrupted. So the productive powers of labor have been undermined and destroyed. For example, agriculture, destruction. So I look at these things not in the same terms you were talking about, but I look at the terms of morality in the terms of human practice. What is the necessary standard of development of human practice needed for the moral as well as the physical progress of our people? We have been losing that. Look at the children, for example. You have a point. How long does a generation of children live? Well, 20, 25 years. That's what we call children or young adults. And then you look beyond that point. You see what happened when people reached about the age of 20. And what were they capable of doing? What had they been trained to do? What had they been trained to understand? What is their conception of culture? What the culture should be? What the culture is? And in every regard, the history of the United States, since the assassination of John F. Since the assassination of John F. Kennedy, the United States has been decaying culturally and morally. It's as if some great agency in heaven has decreed the United States is not deserving much toleration. And we certainly have lost a great deal. We have to go back to the kind of standard which actually John F. Kennedy, not as a special person as such, though he was special, he was dedicated to the fulfillment of his association with Eleanor Roosevelt, who had been his campaign manager for that campaign. She had been the inspirer of the drafting of his programs. And if you think of the great things that John F. Kennedy accomplished while he was still permitted to live, and what his brother was able to do while he still lived, and you look at the history of the politicians, you look at the history of the cultural trends, the economic trends, we have been going downhill all the way at varying rates of decline since the assassination of John F. Kennedy. That has never been corrected. Our conditions today are far worse than they ever were then. They've been progressively worse. And that's what the problem is. It's a moral problem. And the moral problem is not expressed in morals as a nominal subject. Moral is practice. Moral is what you do. Moral is what you do for mankind. You know, we are human beings. We're not animals. But often we apply to ourselves a standard of measure for culture as that of animals. Because the human being is different than all other things. Think back. Where did human beings start from? Well, the first knowledge we have of a human being, what it is, we find in the cases in South Africa, where we find some people as survivors, or what had been survivors, who cooked their food. And that made the difference between them and animals. Mankind cooks his food. Animals do not. They eat what they get. And so the culture is based on the fact that how did mankind develop? If you take the Handbook of Chemistry, just simple, basic, and universal Handbook of Chemistry, how do you measure progress in chemistry? You measure it by going up in the energy flux density of different elements and different compositions that you use. And that's the source. That is done willfully. How is it done? Well, it's done by what's called human creativity. And no animal has human creativity. What does a human being do that an animal can't? The animal discovers a principle of nature, like a physical principle, and uses that principle. Mankind's power and knowledge is increased by the utilization of those principles which are discovered. We're now on the edge of thermonuclear fusion as the active principle of power for the existence of the human species. If we do not develop thermonuclear fusion, as we could, we're not going to survive as a species, or we'll go to some depraved condition. So so morality has to be defined by the distinction of man from beast. It's not that the beasts are inherently bad, they're just not human. And what is human is the power of the human species, like the first man we discovered, who has cooked his food for the evening meal. No animal can do that. And we find that the progress of man to higher and higher layers of fire, of energy flux density, determines the culture of mankind and its progress. And it's our commitment to that culture and commitment to not what we experience as success in our life, but what we make possible for other human beings to succeed in doing when we are gone. We live in the future. We don't live to be buried. We live to be remembered.
Good morning, and it's almost afternoon, Mr. and Mrs. LaRouche. It was a pleasure seeing you and hearing you today. I always get a lot out of both of you. And I have two very, very broad questions. My background is accounting. I am a retired certified public accountant. I used to specialize in financial statements, taxes, and dabbled in economics, but not obviously as sophisticated as you. My questions are, we have our goals. We know what we want. How do we do them? We want to impeach Obama. We have got to get the strength in the Congress, and I'm not limiting it to Congress because we do have a constitution, and I guess we are a nation of rules and that constitution. How, in that regard, or maybe extra constitutionally, will we be able to implement all our goals or many of our goals that we want to achieve?
I think the goal is essentially progress. Progress of mankind. Look, we have, in the history of mankind, we have all kinds of cultures. We see the degree of suffering that prevails, or the ratio of suffering that prevails in those cultures. Our goal is always to improve the future, just like the case of the poor man who cooked his food for the first time in some southern part of Africa. So mankind's ability to realize progress which mankind gives to those who survive him, and those who, in the process of surviving him, create the higher state of living for mankind generally. Our progress, our morality must be the future of mankind, the future of human progress as a species. We've now reached the point that mankind cannot successfully maintain himself on this planet without thermonuclear fusion as a technology. The problems become too great. Mankind is I tell my people, don't try to start putting man on Mars, but we can put machinery on Mars, equipment on Mars. We can control it by methods with the suitable technologies. We can actually use Mars as an instrument for defense of Earth. We are now in danger of defense of the entire human population on Earth by certain objects which, if they hit Earth, will kill everyone, or if they don't do that, they'll do a lot of damage, great damage, as much. So therefore, our human mission, unlike animals have no true inherent mission. Huh? They have things we call a mission, attention, but only mankind can make a discovery, a principle, which is the answer to a fault, a failure in the conditions of life today. And it's the improvement of the conditions of life of mankind and the usefulness of man's progress, which is for me everything. Progress, the change from today to tomorrow, the rise from poverty to some degree of success, the rise from ignorance to knowledge, the rise to the joy of realizing that we ourselves as individuals have the ability to make or induce the changes which raise man's condition as such. We should be the servants of our own future and the servants of those who came before us to make that future possible.
So we do have a few more minutes. If there are any other questions for either Mr. or Mrs. LaRouche. Here's your chance. Great. Come up here and take the seat on the bench, and you can go after him. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, Mr. and Mrs. LaRouche. My name is Damian Baker. I'm a local here in Los Angeles. To add on to the question, and by the way, that response was amazing, and thank you for that. To add on to the response or the question, as an individual, what can an individual do, implementing a little bit on the answer to the last gentleman's question, what can I do as an individual to join the movement and to actually make a difference?
Well, that's what I do. I do it not for any other reason than the fact that I think it's necessary to make a contribution to the progress of mankind if you're able to discover a means to do so. My motivation is always just simply that. I'm 91 years of age, you know, and so I'm not looking for great futures and great inheritances from anyone to come. I rejoice in the ability to have the freedom and opportunity to make a difference, a difference in the progress of mankind. I've accumulated a lot of knowledge over the experience and in other ways, and I find I can use these experiences as knowledge and to do something good. And I enjoy doing something good. I enjoy creating things. I don't like to do a lot of repetitive things unless it's necessary for the creating of things. That's my motive.
Thank you.
Maybe I can add just one thought to this. I mean, mostly people ask, what can I do as an individual? And, you know, I think we have one case where one individual has really caused an earthquake, and that is Edward Snowden. I mean, I think for some months people underestimated the effect his revelation and whistleblowing would have. For example, when it became known beginning of June that that the NSA was wiretapping and every communication of all citizens in the United States and also in Europe and many other countries. In Germany, it took really months before people really woke up. But when it became known that the cell phone of Mrs. Merkel was also tapped, you have now an earthquake, which I do not believe will come back into its previous condition of normality, because, you know, I mean, there is right now a bigger rift in the German-American relation than at any time since '45. And that similar thing is happening with many other countries, which, you know, really shows that if you have an individual who does the right thing at the right time, it can have enormous consequences. And, you know, while obviously he was in a unique position to do something extraordinary, I think if people think about it, you know, we are now in a non-linear development, and we have a short window of opportunity where courageous individuals who have a clear mission sense can do indeed miracles. Because, you know, I mean, for a long time, the Obamacare and similar programs where, you know, people had illusions about it. But now it's coming down like a ton of bricks. The cut in food stamps, the Obamacare eliminating health care for so many people, the brutal cuts in many social programs for people who absolutely are depending on it. All of this will hit. And I think what you can do and many others is to help us to reach out to the elected officials on a local level, mayors, city councils, state legislators, you know, other institutions on a local level, so that we really get a mass movement to exert pressure on the Congress, because there is a huge difference between inside the Beltway and outside the Beltway. And I think we have to bring the problems and the absolute urgent life and death concerns from outside the Beltway into Washington so that we get the Congress to act. Congressmen have to be re-elected. They are now in their election districts. Go there, raise the issues, and, you know, organize just like a firestorm around you, your colleagues, your friends. And I think we can revitalize the United States. I think the United States has proven many, many times that they can come back from crisis and go back to their original greatness. And this is now a time where many individuals like you acting together for a good plan can indeed change history. And the whole world is looking at us and you, because the United States is the place which has the key to the future destiny of mankind in its hand right now.
Mr. LaRouche, this is Luis Armendariz. I live here in Encina Heights, California. My background is in industrial engineering, and I'm also a part-time professor for Cal Poly Pomona here in California, and the School of Engineering. My comment here is about education. Since here in California and pretty much in all the United States, there has been a decline in agriculture as an overall industry. The second largest decline is going to be in manufacturing, which also declining. So this opens what is called a big sector, what's called the service industry. So with this decline both in agriculture and manufacturing, this is going to put this country in dependency from other countries, such as China, such as South America, and Europe as well. So what this is going to happen is a trend in an impact in education as well. As you can see right now, with the manipulation of the media, the things that we eat, the things that we wear, the cars that we drive, is going to have an impact on dependency on education. The problem also, my question is around what your organization is doing around education. As we know here in California, there's a large proportion of teenagers that is about the 20% between the ages of 15 to 18, that is about 20% that not in the school and doesn't have a job. So we actually seen a trend, very, very critical trend that the government is not doing enough to provide education all the way to superior level of education, such as university. There's been a struggle for students to find courses here just to go to college. So what is your organization doing around education?
Well, the problem here is not often the industries or the people who are applying for jobs in industry or wish they had jobs in industry or something of that nature. The problem is the culture of the United States is presently not actively doing anything about increasing employment or productivity. We're actually having a collapse, a real collapse of any possibility of creativity in productive employment in general. There are no jobs. No one is creating the jobs. And with what just happened with the president's recent decision implemented is now to starve people, to deny them jobs, give them sustenance employment, but not to give them the means to produce anything. We're killing. We are on the road of mass murder against our population. And it's going to hit most probably the older people, is going to hit the poorer people who are traditionally poorer. And there is little hope for the future of mankind as long as this is tolerated. We could, technically, the United States could, under the right president and with the right policy, with the Glass-Steagall policy, the United States could organize growth in terms of improvement of the conditions and opportunities. And the opportunities is the real name. Because you know in production, in all kinds of production, is the ability to rise from a less capability to rise to an improved one. And it's the process of progress from young people, young adults particularly, to go to older and to progress is the secret. We do not have anymore a driver program for progress in the quality of employment or the results of it. Everything is being done to destroy people. And now what the president has just done is a death blow against progress. And the only solution for this thing is to get a real program going, as I indicated, which means you have to use a higher technology to get this thing moving. And then we got to realize that we are not doing anything to help most of our young people in finding a future for themselves. And I think the key thing is not the job, it's the future that counts. And the job should be an integral part of the future. If there's not improvement in skills, if there's not a challenge to do something better than you did before, you don't have real much in the way of progress. You have monotony, and that's terrible.
I just want to add, that is why we emphasize so much that we need to go back to the Kennedy era paradigm, naturally applied for the present time, Because if you remember during the Apollo program, if you would have asked pupils in the school, what do you want to become? There was a large number of people who said, I want to become an astronomer, an astronaut, I want to travel in space. There was a tremendous cultural optimism. And I think the equivalent of what Roosevelt did with the CCC program, training untrained youth and putting them through education in a work job, it would be today, both a Mars program to defend the planet against the danger of asteroids, the strategic defense of the Earth. But it would also be the idea, that we develop a crash program for thermonuclear fusion so that young people would be motivated to again study natural science. And, if you have a clear conception of where the world has to be in 10, 20, 50, 100 years from now, together with the kind of science driver program of NAVAPA, the World Land Bridge and so forth, you create an incentive, because young people right now are really in a complete desperate mood. I mean, if you are a young person, with the present collapse in the transatlantic region, I mean, there is nothing to look forward to. And that has to be changed with a vision, and then people have to be mobilized around such a vision. And the CCC approach, would be absolutely applicable in a modern form today.
Well, thank you both very much. That was an extraordinary dialogue. Let's just give both Helga and Lena a second round of appreciation.
Bye.